The first time I ever learned about this, and it shocked me because what I learned is that these animals that are used for the products that I loved so much suffered, and suffered so much more than I could have ever imagined. Now, after I read that, I went on a deep dive. I went down this rabbit hole that probably a lot of you relate to, where you look up every single industry that uses animals, and you find out that it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And the more you look into it, the more you realize that animals suffer so much more than you could have even imagined. And you're like, I don't even think I can relate to the suffering that these animals endure at the hands of humans. And so right then, I felt this calling where I felt like this is a problem that I want to spend my life trying to solve. I felt this calling that I really want to help these animals, and if there's one thing I can do with my life, I hope that by the time I die, the world is a little bit better for animals, at least. Now, that was in 2015. But the thing is that after that, for 2.5 years, I did nothing. I would wake up every single day, and this problem would be on my mind. I would think about the suffering that these animals are enduring. I would feel it, and yet every single day I would feel powerless. I did nothing. I would sit on my ass. I was in college at the time, so I would go to class, come back, do my homework, go to bed, and all the while this was in the back of my mind, but I couldn't do anything. And I think it was for maybe three reasons. One is I felt powerless. I was like, what is a guy like me gonna do about this? I'm just this little college kid. Like, how can I do anything to change the world? I had trouble making friends back then, so I was like, how can I convince anyone to do anything differently that's going to make the world better and solve such a big problem? And the second thing is, I didn't know where to start. I didn't realize that there was an animal rights community like this who did things and who fought really hard to make the world better for animals. And the third thing is, to be honest with you, is that when I first got into this world and I wanted to do something about it, I would look at blogs and YouTube videos, and I would look at the people who seemed to me like leading the movements. And at the time, me being an Asian person, I didn't see anyone who looked like me up there. And so I was like, it didn't feel to me like there was a place for me in the movements. Anyways, that was 2.5 years of my life where I remember every single day I would wake up, I would think about it, but do nothing. And then finally, one day I was like, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm gonna start somewhere. And so I went to my first ever animal rights event. Now, I remember I was so nervous back then. It was a vigil. Now, for people who don't know what a vigil is, it's basically an event where you show up in front of a slaughterhouse and you bear witness to the animals who are going into the slaughterhouse. Now, it was in Los Angeles, and at that one in particular, we were able to give water to the pigs, which is really great because they've been on these trucks for sometimes days at a time with no food and no water. And I remember I was so nervous to go there. Now, not only I was going to a slaughterhouse, which is a very intimidating place to go, I didn't know anyone there. And so I remember I pulled up, and I didn't know the designated parking space, which I still blame on the organizers because they didn't tell us. And I pulled up at the McDonald's that was a 5-minute walk away from the slaughterhouse, and I parked there. And I remember just sitting there for about 5 minutes, being like, should I go or should I go home? Because I felt so nervous to go, and I almost went home. But the reason I didn't was because I was like, well, I drove here, it was 45 minutes. I might as well at least check it out. I wasn't even sure where we were supposed to meet, but somehow I stumbled out of my car, I walked towards the thing, my heart was beating so fast, and I met someone else on the way there who was also going there, so that was very helpful. And then I finally made it there. But I'm so glad I did, because that absolutely changed my life. I think the one thing that really helped me more than anything in my journey was finding community. That when I went to that event, I met people who then introduced me to more people, who introduced me to more events. 2 weeks later, I, on a whim basically, went to the Animal Liberation Conference in Berkeley, California, and I met more people that I could have ever imagined existed that are fighting for this cause. And that's the thing that really changed me. I realized I'm not alone. I'm not the only one who feels like this is such a huge problem that needs solving, and I'm not the only one who desperately wants to do something about it. In fact, there are thousands, tens of thousands, I don't know how many people, but countless people in the world who have the same vision as you, who want to make a difference. And that really empowered me to get out there. And so the message of this is, I guess, you're here today at the Animal Rights March. Okay, we're here today at the Animal Rights March, and I think one of the biggest opportunities for a lot of you here would be to meet other people, especially if you're new. Make an effort to meet a new person, say hi. For me, it's something that's really difficult to do. I'm very introverted, so I'll tell you a couple stories about that in a second. But basically, it's pretty hard for me to do, but I think it's really, really worth it, because if you have community, that, in my opinion, in my experience, is what's going to give you longevity in this movement. That's going to make it so that in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, you're still going to be fighting for this cause, and I think that that's that's what we need, because this is a team effort at the end of the day. I can't do this alone. None of us can do this alone. We have to work together in order to make this happen. So you have my permission. Say hi to someone new today, and hopefully you'll do it. Hi, what's up?